Hello everybody, it's July 20th, 2018. It's been 2 weeks, so it's time for another update of DisneyChris.com and the Disneyland Magical Audio Tour. And boy have I been busy adding new content to the Magical Audio Tour. And I'm going to share that with you today. But before I get into that, I'm going to show you a couple other things that I thought were worth mentioning. The first one is that we have recorded our 100th episode of the Jiminy Crickets podcast. If you haven't listened to the Jiminy Crickets podcast, be sure to check it out. Now you have 100 episodes to choose from. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and we have a website called JiminyCricketPodcast.blogspot.com. You can also link to my podcast from my homepage. If you scroll down just a little bit from the top of my homepage, there's 2 links here. One of them will take you to my podcast. The other one will take you to a podcast that I am a member of called Mouse Music, which is part of the Sideshow Sound radio network. And we have just released a brand new episode of Mouse Music last night about New Orleans Square, the Princess and the Frog animated feature, and I did a segment about Disney legend musical composer George Bruns. So be sure to check that out. Be sure to check out our recent episodes of Jiminy Crickets. We did an episode on America Sings. We did an episode on the Disney classic musical Summer Magic. And we did a 2-part episode on the Enchanted Tiki Room. So that's just a sample of some of the types of shows we do. And coming this Wednesday, the 25th, we will be releasing our 100th episode, which we have already recorded, and I just need to edit it and get it out there, and it's scheduled to come out on Wednesday. So I just wanted to mention that there's more to DisneyChris than just my website. I participate in a couple podcasts. And speaking of podcasts, we would like to start doing a live show on YouTube where we stream live once a week at a scheduled time, probably Wednesday nights around 9 p.m. Eastern live. So that would be about 6 p.m. on the West Coast. Ruthie and I, who host Jiminy Crickets, are both East Coast people, so pretty much the latest we can do the show would be 9 o'clock. It'll be an hour and a half long. But we sort of have an issue with being able to do the live show, so that's why I'm mentioning it right now and letting the cat out of the bag before we've even done a live show. We need help from somebody. Maybe somebody who is kind of a little bit of an expert in computers, because I need to be able to figure out how to use a program of some sort for live streaming where we can show our avatars on the screen. We can bring up images as we're discussing various topics, and where people can join in live conversation. And I know there's programs out there that do this and that are able to be used via YouTube, but I would have to learn one of these programs, and with all my other various goings-on, I really just don't have time to sit down. It would take me several weeks to figure out how to use this type of a program. They're very complicated. They have lots of bells and whistles. So what I really need is I need a volunteer per gratis to do some work for our podcast as a behind-the-scenes technical advisor, and this person would participate in setting up our live podcasts for us. So if you're a Disney fan, and if you're looking for something to do, you have a little bit of extra time, and you know how to work computers, please contact me and let me know. We're very interested in doing the live show, and we want to get started as soon as we can. We're just having trouble finding somebody who would like to help us out. So please contact me and let me know if you're interested. So that being said, the next order of business, I want to talk about Patreon very quickly. Get this out of the way. But I do have a Patreon account. Currently, I have 14 Patreons, and I get $75 a month, which is fantastic. But it does cost me more than that to run and maintain my website and do all my different various projects. And everything that I do is free, and virtually I do have one sponsor that I work with, but pretty much everything is commercial free. It's totally free, and I provide you with so much content, podcasts, thousands of songs, lots of entertainment for you. And if you have a little bit of extra spare change hanging around, even $1 a month would definitely help me out. If 10 people contribute $1 a month, that's $10. And I know a lot more than 10 people go to my site and use my site. So if everybody who visited my site and enjoyed the music could contribute $1 to $2, then that would definitely be enough for me to keep the site going indefinitely. It does cost me money. I am on a fixed income, and every time I add new content, the hosting fees go up and up and up. So the more music I add, the more expensive it is, and I'm going to reach a point where I won't be able to add any new content because I won't be able to afford it. So if anybody can spare a buck or a couple bucks a month, or as much as you would like to contribute, please visit my Patreon. It's DisneyChris, www.patreon.com/DisneyChris, all one word. So I got that out of the way. Oh, and the other thing is, you can get to my Patreon account from my homepage if you go to the top here. Well, first of all, if you scroll to the very bottom of my homepage, there's a link. I'm not on my homepage. There's a link down here where you can donate to PayPal. You can also make a one-time donation if you prefer to PayPal, or you can also do a recurring monthly donation via PayPal as well if you prefer to use PayPal over Patreon. There's that option as well. And if you go to if you click on this link at the top of my this is the table of contents at the top of every page of my website. But if you click on donate to site, it'll bring you to this page, and it'll give you a link to both my Patreon and another link to my PayPal. So if you would like to contribute, that would be fantastic, and I would really appreciate the help. I mentioned just a minute ago that I do have one sponsor, and they sponsor my podcast as well as they help me out with my website, and I thought it was worth mentioning them here because this is an entirely free service. It doesn't cost you a nickel. I used them when I recently went to Walt Disney World, and it was fantastic. They went above and beyond, and this was before they were even, a sponsor. So I was just, an average customer. There was nothing special about me, but they still went above and beyond to make my vacation fantastic. And I had a lot of strange criteria that they had to work around. It was kind of short notice, but they did everything they could. Mike is the owner of Concierge. They are not a booking agent. They are a vacation planning service, and they can plan any Disney vacation around the world Except for the Asian parks, they don't do the Asian parks, only because Disney doesn't own the Asian parks and they work with Disney. So they do both parks in the States. They do Disneyland Paris, they do Aulani in Hawaii, they do Disney Cruise Line, and they do all the adventures by Disney around the world. So if you are planning on doing a Disney vacation, call them up. They'll do all the legwork for you. They'll book your hotel, they'll book your reservations. If any lower rates pop up, they will change everything around so you can get the lower rate. They work directly through Disney, and they get you the least expensive prices. They get you the best hotel rooms that they can. They get you all sorts of special perks, all sorts of things you could do on your own, but why would you want to do it when you can have somebody else do all that legwork for you for free? It doesn't cost you anything. So they're www.concierge.com. So enough with my plugs and ads and commercials. I don't always mention these things on my videos, but every once in a while I feel like I should bring them up because, again, it does cost money to run my site. And if you support my advertiser, Concierge, it helps me. Just mention that Jiminy Crickets or DisneyChris.com sent you. So I'm still plugging away with my song of the day. Today's song is the Aristocats, and every Monday is going to continue to be Mickey Monday, so that means every Monday from now until December 31st will be a Mickey-themed song, and during October and December it'll be a Mickey-themed Halloween or Christmas song. So, that's kind of what's going on my homepage. Let's talk about the Disneyland Magical Audio Tour. And the first chapter I want to talk about just quickly, because I made one small addition, is my Town Square chapter, which is chapter 2. And I have one new track that I'm going to be adding, which I just put in a picture for and a spot for where the track is going to go, and this is Walt Disney's formal office grand piano. They used to have a display at the Disneyland Opera House of Walt Disney's offices, and in there they had the actual piano that was in Walt Disney's office, which has now been moved to Burbank, where it originally was located. They refurbished his actual offices, and now you can see all that stuff at the Disney Studio if you're lucky enough to get a tour of the Disney Studio. But at one time it was located on Main Street, and so I thought it would be fun to include some of the music that would likely have been played on this piano as a fun little addition to my Town Square chapter. So I added a little slot for that. So that's really the only thing I have to tell you about this chapter, but I thought I would mention it. So let's go to the chapter that I've really been working on, and that would be Disneyland Bandstand. And as you can see, I can link to it from this page, and this is the same on every page of the Magical Audio Tour. I have a little directory at the bottom of the page, and you can link to every chapter down there. So here's Disneyland Bandstand. And I'm happy to report that out of 120 tracks on this chapter, I have 3 left to finish. I've been working very diligently since the last update, and I added a ton of new tracks. And the first one is the 1990s Grad Night Party, which is track 89 on this page. I had already completed all the other tracks in this section, which I call totally 80s After Dark plus 190s. It fits in this section just because it's the same type of music. It covers from 1990 till about 1994, which is when they really stopped having big name live bands playing at Grad Night. Now they mostly just do recorded music and and DJs, but back in the day they had live groups, and that sort of was phased out in the mid-90s. So I have a track here representing the early 90s when they were still having live groups, and all of the music in this track is from an actual band that performed at Disneyland during grad night. So be sure to check that out if you are a fan of 90s pop music. So after I finally got that finished, I finally started working on my last section that I need to complete, which is big bands in Disneyland. These are all this is all audio taken from a Disney Channel television series which aired in 1984, and each episode featured a big band, and these were the real bands for the most part. Sometimes the orchestra leaders had passed on by the time 1984 came around, but in many cases the original band leaders were still involved with the bands, and they were performing at Disneyland at the Plaza Gardens, and it was all videotaped for a television series which ran 12 episodes. So let me quickly just go through these. It's pretty self-explanatory what these are, but the first track is sort of the theme song for the episode, which I found an expanded version of the theme song, so it's the full audio of the actual music, which was used as the theme for the television series. And then this Glenn Miller Orchestra, directed by Dick Gerhardt. Glenn Miller died in the 1940s, and he was missing in action during World War II, but his music has lived on with the official Glenn Miller Orchestra, which has over the years been directed by various people. And in the when the Disney Channel series aired, Dick Gerhardt was the then director of the official Glenn Miller Orchestra. So this is the real orchestra with the real members from the original orchestra, but unfortunately Glenn Miller was never able to play in Disneyland because he passed away before Disneyland was even created. But anyway, that being said, I was able to find the audio for every episode, all 12 episodes of the series, with one exception. So really only 11 of them I was able to find. The Glenn Miller Orchestra, I could not find the audio or video of that episode. So I found a similar type broadcast from the same year, 1984, with the Glenn Miller Orchestra, and this was aired on television. And so I used the audio from that other special to represent this special, because it's basically the same type of music played by the same type of people from the exact same year. So technically this is not the actual television series, but that is the only exception. And if I ever do come across the authentic audio for it, I will replace this. But in the meantime, this is what I like to call a placeholder, and it's appropriate as a placeholder until I can find the real deal. So with these others, the Count Basie Orchestra, Count Basie performed at Disneyland many times, but he had just passed away, I think in '83, 1 year before this was taped. So this was sort of a tribute to him, and it featured his longtime singer with the group, Joe Williams, who sort of took over as the leader temporarily after Count Basie had died. The interesting thing about these orchestras is even after the band leaders that the bands are named for pass away, these bands live on, and most of them are still in operation today. You know, the Woody Herman Orchestra, the Count Basie Orchestra are still touring around the world with you know, the official moniker of these bands that have just carried on over the decades and hopefully will carry on indefinitely over time. But in the case of Woody Herman, he was still around in the mid-'80s, and Woody Herman himself performed in this episode. And the name, he called his band kind of a nickname, the Young Thundering Herd, for some reason. So, Cab Calloway, he was there, the real guy, Heidi-Ho. And Bob Crosby and the Bobcats featuring K-Star. K-Star was a famous singer. She had several hits in the 40s and 50s. Ray McKinley with Ella Mae Morse. Again, Ella Mae Morse had many big hit songs. The Jimmy Dorsey Orchestra. And Jimmy Dorsey was not around, but Lee Castle was the orchestra leader after Jimmy Dorsey passed away. And famous singer Helen Forrest sang in this episode. Now this is interesting. The Artie Shaw Orchestra was no longer being led by Artie Shaw, even though he was still around. He retired, but the band kept going on, and it was under the direction of a gentleman named Dick Johnson. But for the special on the Disney Channel, Artie Shaw actually came back out of retirement and performed with his orchestra for the special. So that's why I have it kind of phrased strange here. The Artie Shaw Orchestra featuring Artie Shaw. You might be thinking, well, duh. But this is kind of... he wasn't always part of his orchestra at this time. So I thought I'd make a point of saying that this is the Artie Shaw Orchestra featuring the real Artie Shaw. Lionel Hampton and his big band. And I have 3 left to go. Les Brown, Buddy Morrow, and Buddy Rich. Now, Les Brown, I'm about a little over halfway done editing it. And maybe by the time you're watching this, if you watch it later today, it'll already be posted. But I plan to get these other 2 done within the next couple of days. So, this chapter is almost done. And I hope to have it done in time so I can get this done and then work on editing episode 100 of the Jiminy Crickets podcast. And then I'll be ready to move on to other things. So that's my update for today. I know I said I added a ton of music, and I did, because each of these is averages about an hour long. But it's divided only amongst 9 new tracks that I've added. But they takes a lot of time. I mean, some of these take 12 hours of final editing to get done. It's a lot of hard work to do these. So that's why they just kind of tinker out one at a time, little by little. So that's basically my update. Oh, and I will be providing a track list in the show notes, which Brian, my new show note writer, will be adding show notes for this episode in a few days. And I will provide a track list of the 1990s grad night party for him to include in the show notes, so you can see that there. So, hope everybody's having a good summer. It's been a little warm here in Rhode Island. I've been running my air conditioner pretty much non-stop for the past couple weeks. But I'm just grateful to have an air conditioner at this. I'd be dying if I didn't have one. Anyway, have a terrific summer, and I will talk to you in a couple weeks. Bye-bye.